Quote, Amber had stomped on her stomach and said, "Now you know how you feel when a pregnant woman gets punched in the stomach." And then I stomped on her stomach. Knight says they tied up Dockery and forced her to drink different mixtures. Quote,
Amber, continuing coverage now as 6 people charged in connection with the torture and the murder of a woman in Westmoreland County are set to have their preliminary hearing today.
We, the jury, unanimously find that the defendant, Michael Shane Bargo Jr., should be sentenced to death. Yes.
Michael Bargo holds his head after hearing he is sentenced to death for the second time on Tuesday.
We're caught. Mike's at the bag picking teeth from his skull and playing with his tongue. He's all sick and everything.
Some killers don't murder for revenge. They do it for fun. In this video, we're diving into chilling cases of murderers who tortured children purely for their own twisted pleasure. What you're about to hear and see is graphic and disturbing. Viewer discretion is strongly advised.
One drink had Amber's feces, Angie's pee, soap, and oil. Knight says they gave Dockery sleeping pills and antibiotics. She begged to be let go, but they decided they couldn't trust her to not tell what they had done. Quote, Ricky went and got a knife and told me to stab her. I hesitated a little bit, and then I stabbed her in the chest 3 times. Then Ricky said, "Dang, the expletive is still alive." So I stabbed her again.
First up, the horrifying story of Seth Jackson, the 15-year-old boy who got tortured and brutally killed in a cabin in the woods.
Testimony today in the case against 2 siblings accused in the murder of a Marion County teen. Prosecutors played 2 video interviews that showed the apparent confessions of both Amber Wright and Kyle Hooper.
April 17th, 2011. A 15-year-old boy named Seth Jackson walked into what he thought would be a conversation with his ex-girlfriend. Instead, it became his death sentence. What happened to him was gruesome and twisted beyond belief. And what's worse, it was all orchestrated by a group of teenagers who enjoyed every second of his suffering. Seth Jackson was your typical teenager from Bellevue, Florida. Born on February 3rd, 1996, he was the youngest of 3 brothers. People remembered Seth as kind, full of energy, and passionate about sports. He had big dreams of becoming a UFC fighter. But all of that came crashing down because of one girl, his ex-girlfriend, Amber Wright.
Today of big stories, this one is likely to make national headlines. Marion County deputies think this bucket holds the remains of a teen they say was killed in a horrific way. In all, dive teams found 3 buckets after hours of searching a Lime Rock pit in Ocala.
Amber and Seth had dated for 3 months before things fell apart. Seth ended the relationship in March 2011, accusing Amber of cheating on him with 18-year-old Mike Bargo. Amber didn't take the breakup lightly. Instead of moving on, she became consumed by hatred. And with the help of Mike and a few other so-called friends, she set a trap for Seth, one he would never escape.
Detectives say 15-year-old Amber Wright, who once dated Seth Jackson, lured him to the house on 53rd Avenue in Summerfield Sunday night. Jackson was with his friend Brittany Jones when he got a text from Amber asking him to come over.
He's like, "No, I probably won't." I was like, "Well, don't go home tonight." And he was like, I will. And then he came here anyways.
On the night of April 17th, Amber messaged Seth, claiming she wanted to work things out. She begged him to meet her at her friend Charlie Ely's house, a rundown trailer in Summerfield. Seth was cautious, even warning Amber not to have him jumped. Amber reassured him, saying she just wanted to talk. She lied. When Seth arrived at the trailer, he was ambushed. Waiting inside were Amber, Mike Bargo, Kyle Hooper, Amber's half-brother, Justin Soto, and Charlie Ely. As soon as Seth sat down, Kyle blindsided him, smashing him in the head with a wooden stick. Seth tried to get up and escape, but Kyle kept hitting him until the stick broke. That's when Justin joined in, beating Seth even harder. But Seth wasn't going down without a fight. Bloodied and barely able to stand, he managed to stumble toward the kitchen, desperate to escape. That's when Mike Bargo pulled out a gun and shot him, twice. Seth collapsed onto the floor, but the nightmare wasn't over. While the girls, Amber and Charlie, hid in another room, Mike and the others dragged Seth to a bathtub. Mike, in a fit of rage, continued beating and torturing Seth's lifeless body. He shot him several more times and even tried to break his kneecaps. At one point, Justin held Seth down while Mike choked him. Seth was barely alive, But Mike wasn't done. Eventually, he shot Seth in the head, ending his life. But that's not all. What they did next was even more horrifying.
I hit him over the head with a stick.
Who'd you hit?
Seth.
Okay.
And he was in the chair, and I got in the kitchen. I said, now, house. And then all of a sudden I hear, bam, bam, bam. Mike sitting there laying bullets into him.
So you saw Mike Bargo shoot Seth?
Yes, ma'am. And he grabbed the body, put it into the bathtub, and then he was talking about how...
Mike ordered the group to clean up the scene. They scrubbed the trailer with bleach, trying to get rid of the evidence. Then they stuffed Seth's body into a sleeping bag and carried him outside to a fire pit. Mike was completely unhinged, taking sick pleasure in mutilating Seth even after he was dead. He smashed Seth's skull with a shovel and pulled out his teeth, laughing as he played with his victim's remains. By the next morning, there was nothing left of Seth but ashes and fragments. Mike scooped the remains into paint buckets, weighed them down with cinder blocks, and dumped them into a flooded quarry nearby. He thought he had gotten away with it, but Seth's parents knew something was wrong. When Seth didn't come home, his parents reported him missing. Police quickly zeroed in on Mike, Amber, and the others after Seth's mom mentioned that Mike had previously threatened her son, saying, "I have a bullet with your name on it." Investigators brought in the teens for questioning, and one by one, their stories unraveled.
When Jackson came over, 2 people beat him, and Bargo allegedly shot him 4 times. Then the group put his body in a bathtub to try and stuff him in a sleeping bag. According to the report, they realized he was still alive, and Bargo allegedly shot him again. Detectives say then they took the body to the backyard to burn it.
Typically, it takes a long time and a lot of heat to burn a body completely, so it was burning for several hours through the night into the morning.
27-year-old James Haven allegedly helped Bargo dump the remains, which detectives believe they found in a lime rock pit Wednesday afternoon.
Kyle was the first to crack. He confessed to his mom that he had been involved in Seth's murder. His confession led police to the rest of the group, who turned on each other during hours of interrogations. Amber admitted she lured Seth to the trailer, but she blamed Mike for everything. Mike, on the other hand, acted like he was untouchable, showing no remorse for what he had done. Eventually, the truth came out. Mike had masterminded the entire plan, fueled by his rage and a twisted desire to kill. Amber played her part, luring Seth to his death out of spite. Kyle, Justin, and Charlie were willing accomplices, standing by as their friend was tortured and murdered. Not one of them called for help. Not one of them tried to stop it.
I couldn't believe it. I didn't know anybody was that sick to do something like that to a 15-year-old little kid.
All of the suspects are charged with first-degree murder, except for James Havens, who is charged as an accessory after the fact.
In the end, all 5 were charged with first-degree murder. Mike Bargo, the ringleader, was sentenced to death. The others received life sentences, though Charlie Ely later took a plea deal and was released in 2020. Amber tried to appeal her sentence but failed. To this day, none of them have shown any real remorse. Second in line is the spine-chilling story of 17-year-old Jose Amaya Guardado. If you thought the last case was disturbing, wait till you hear about this one.
This victim was hacked with a machete
to try to keep the discovery secret.
It's a very unusual case.
July 2015. In the suffocating heat of a Florida summer, a shallow grave hidden deep in the woods near Homestead revealed a horrifying secret. Inside was the mutilated body of 17-year-old Jose Amaya Guardado. For days, his family had desperately searched for him. What they found wasn't just tragic, it was monstrous. Jose's story began with hope. His mother, Lucia, brought him to the United States from El Salvador to escape the violence plaguing their home country. She dreamed of a better life for him, one where he could pursue his goals of becoming a mechanic. He enrolled in the Homestead Job Corps, a federally funded program designed to give at-risk youth a second chance. But within those walls, danger festered.
Lucia Guardado thanking God her son's accused killers are now in jail.
There's a charge of first-degree murder.
18-year-old Desiree Strickland, the latest arrest. She and 3 others.
Murder with a deadly weapon.
20-year-old Kahim Arbello, 18-year-old Jonathan Lucas, and 19-year-old Christian Colon.
On June 28, 2015, Jose left the Job Corps campus to grab a snack. He He called his mom to let her know he'd be back soon. That was the last time she ever heard from him. Hours turned into days, and Jose was nowhere to be found. His family was frantic, but no one could have guessed the horrors that had unfolded. Jose's classmates, Kahim Arbelo, 20, Jonathan Lucas, 18, Christian Colin, 19, and Desiree Strickland, 19, were the ones who took his life. These weren't strangers. These were people Jose had trusted, people he spent time with at school. But for weeks, they had been plotting his murder. The motive? A small debt. Police believe it was over drugs. Whatever the reason, it was enough for these four to decide that Jose needed to die. They weren't impulsive about it either. This was premeditated in the most chilling way. 2 weeks before the attack, they dug his grave in a secluded patch of woods, setting the stage for their horrific crime.
All charged with murder in the death of 17-year-old Jose Guardado. They all lived and attended school at Homestead Job Corps, steps away from where the victim's family discovered the gruesome scene 3 days after he went missing.
On the night of the murder, Kahim and the others lured Jose to the woods under false pretenses. What happened next was pure, calculated evil. Kahim, the group's ringleader, swung a machete with brutal force, slashing Jose repeatedly. Blood sprayed across the dirt as Jose screamed for mercy. But the others didn't stop him. Jose, battered and bleeding, was forced into the shallow grave they had prepared. He was still alive, gasping and struggling, when Kahim crushed his face with the machete. Dirt was thrown over his body while he was still breathing. Jose was buried alive, his final moments filled with terror and pain. And if that wasn't horrifying enough, what happened next is even worse.
Police say the attack happened Sunday, June 28th. According to the police report, the teen was lured into a wooded area near the school where the killers had already dug a grave and had a machete waiting. Police say the three men have confessed, giving graphic details. Arbelo allegedly swinging the machete as the others watched.
After burying Jose, Kahim and Desiree stayed behind. They didn't panic or feel remorse. Instead, they had sex near his fresh grave, as if the murder had been nothing more than a thrill. The killers thought they had gotten away with it. They burned Jose's belongings, destroyed evidence, and acted as though nothing had happened. Kahim even bragged about the crime to others, confident that no one would ever piece it together. But their arrogance was what got them caught. When Jose didn't return home, his family reported him missing. Police began investigating, and it wasn't long before the cracks in the group's story began to show. Kahim's boasts led detectives straight to him and his accomplices. Desiree, the only female in the group, tried to play innocent during her interrogation. She begged to speak to her father and claimed, "I didn't kill that boy." But the evidence told a different story. She had been part of the planning, part of the ambush, and part of the cover-up.
The report states as the victim laid on the ground dying, he was ordered to lay in the grave. The body burned and buried. Then, according to the police report, Arbelo and Strickland had sex in the woods before heading back to campus.
Eventually, she cracked and took a plea deal, admitting to her role in Jose's murder. She was sentenced to 15 years in prison, with 7 years credited for time served. If she behaves, she could be out by 2028. Kahim, however, faces a far graver fate. As the mastermind behind the murder, he has been charged with first-degree murder. Prosecutors are seeking the death penalty, and given the sheer brutality of the crime, it's likely they'll get it. Christian and Jonathan also pleaded guilty to conspiracy charges and await sentencing. For Jose's family, the pain is never-ending. His mother, Lucia, who had tried so hard to protect him from violence, was left devastated. "I brought my son here to save him from killers," she said. "I never imagined this horror would happen to him here." Last but not least, our final case is the terrifying story of Jennifer Dockery, the 30-year-old woman tortured to death for 3 whole days.
Talk about graphic, you talk about disturbing. I've been a reporter now for almost 20 years. I've seen and I've heard an awful lot of things, but to hear somebody describe in detail how he and his friends tortured a woman and then killed her, honestly, it's the most disturbing thing I've ever heard.
February 11th, 2010. It's a freezing winter night in Greensburg, Pennsylvania. A garbage can sits in the lot of Greensburg-Salem Middle School, its lid barely closed. Inside that trash can, the tortured, lifeless body of Jennifer Lee Dougherty, wrapped in Christmas lights, left like garbage. Jennifer's killers weren't strangers. They were people she called friends, her so-called new circle, a group she trusted. But they, known as the Greensburg Six, betrayed her in the most horrifying ways imaginable.
None of the 6 defendants said a word as they arrived at court this morning, but inside the courtroom, the taped statement of suspect Melvin Knight did plenty of talking. According to detectives, they interviewed Knight just hours after they had discovered the body of 30-year-old Jennifer Dockery. Knight describes in great detail how they tortured Dockery for 36 hours before they killed her.
The perpetrators were Ricky Smirns, Melvin Knight, Angela Marinucci, Peggy Miller, Amber Meidinger, and Robert Masters. These 6 weren't your typical friends, more like a toxic mix of manipulation, abuse, and mental instability. Each had a dark past. Ricky Smirns, the ringleader, grew up in chaos. His mother was a drug-addicted sex worker, and he suffered severe abuse from his family. Diagnosed with PTSD by age 8, Smirns claimed to have multiple personalities, as many as 7. Melvin Knight? He fell out of a moving car at age 5, leaving him with lifelong cognitive impairments. His girlfriend, Amber Meidinger, met him at a homeless shelter just weeks before the murder. Then there was Angela Marinucci, a 17-year-old who had her own head injury after being hit by a truck. It all started on February 8th, 2010. Jennifer Dougherty, a 30-year-old with the mental abilities of a teenager, left her home in Mount Pleasant to visit her friends. She was excited. Jennifer had lived a life of loneliness, and this group seemed like the first real connection she'd made. Little did she know, Angela Marinucci, jealous of Jennifer's bond with Smirns, had already decided Jennifer had to die. The moment Jennifer stepped into that Greensburg apartment at 428 North Pennsylvania Avenue, the group pounced. They stole her money, tore through her belongings, and started their cruel game.
According to the statement, it started when Dockery made a pass at defendant Ricky Smirns. Smirns' girlfriend, Angie Marinucci, got angry and started beating Dockery. The others joined in, including Knight and Amber Meidinger. Quote, Amber had stomped on her stomach and said, "Now you know how you feel when a pregnant woman gets punched in the stomach." And then I stomped on her stomach.
Jennifer's nightmare began with humiliation. They poured liquids into her bag, covered her face with nail polish, and cut off chunks of her hair. Then it got worse. They beat her with crutches and a metal towel rack. They dumped oatmeal, spices, and detergent on her head, forcing her to eat it along with feces and urine. But they didn't stop there. Melvin Knight raped her while the others laughed. They gagged her, stripped her naked, and continued the abuse. Jennifer's cries for mercy were ignored. At one point, she was forced to write a fake suicide note, a chilling attempt to cover up what they were planning next. On February 11th, after 3 days of unrelenting torture, the group made a decision. Jennifer had to die. They took a vote. Yes, a vote. It was unanimous. Jennifer was tied up with Christmas lights. Smirns handed Melvin Knight a knife, and he stabbed her in the chest and throat. Jennifer's life ended in agony. They stuffed her body into a trash can, wrapped in decorations, and dumped it near the middle school.
We're getting an exclusive look inside the apartment where Jennifer Dockery was tortured and killed. The trial for the first of 6 suspects started just hours ago. Now, Channel 4 Action News Westmoreland County Bureau Chief Jennifer Mealy takes us inside that crime scene.
The Greensburg Six didn't get away with it. Police found Jennifer's body the next day, and the investigation quickly led back to the apartment. What followed was a trial as chilling as the crime itself. Ricky Smirns and Melvin Knight were sentenced to death. Knight's appeals have all failed. Angela Marinucci, being 17 at the time, avoided the death penalty, but was initially sentenced to life without parole. However, in 2022, her sentence was reduced to 60 years to life. Amber Meidinger, Peggy Miller, and Robert Masters struck plea deals for lighter sentences in exchange for testifying against the others.
Now, look at what we found. On the floor, a swatch of carpet that was removed, likely blood spatter, being tested for DNA. New tenants now rent the apartment along Pennsylvania Avenue, and they've spent months fixing it up. But several coats of paint still can't hide all the horror. Now, as part of the torture, police say she was dragged into this bathroom several times, made to drink detergent, even her own urine. Take a look at the ceiling. You can still see the purple spots where police sprayed chemicals to look for more traces of DNA.
These were killers who didn't just murder. They tortured their victims and took pleasure in it. Even worse, the victims knew their killers. The terrifying truth is, the people closest to us can be the most dangerous. Who knows? Maybe someone near you is capable of something just as twisted. What are your thoughts on these cases? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to smash that like button, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next video.